What's up, everybody? Thanks for stopping by, and I'm glad you did. So I got a short video here that's geared for beginners. Now, if you've got a lot of experience in freshwater, you may not find a lot of interest in this video, but if you want to stay and watch, that'd be great too. So I work with a lot of kids. I do a lot of rod giveaways for youth, and I'm always hit with these questions of, what's your favorite lure? What lure for bass? What lure for snakehead? How deep should I fish? Things like that. So I thought I would put together a short video for these kids that shows them top water baits, subsurface baits, 3 to 8 feet, and maybe throw in some jigs and soft plastics for working the bottom. So that's what this video is going to be all about. If you're interested, follow me to the next screen. Let's start with topwater lures. Everything that you see laid out here came from my tackle boxes. So when I'm fishing topwater, which is not every day, these are the lures that I'm looking at. Over here we have our frogs. These frogs are hollow body lures. Each one of these frogs is made by a different company. These are called whopper ploppers. Now, they're hard body lures. Great lures, all made by the same company. These are called buzz baits, also hard body lures. Buzz bait has a blade in the front that spins while you're reeling it through the water. This is called a hula popper. These little creatures here are actually snakehead lures, but they work on smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, chain pickerel. I've caught catfish, rockfish, speckled trout, you name it. You can catch any fish that hunts other fish on these lures. And by the way, these are also hollow body lures. This little white mouse over here is another hollow body lure, and it works a little bit differently. We'll get into that later. But all of these lures float on top of the water. So let's change screens, and I'm going to break these down one by one, tell you how I use them, what I like, what I don't like. I'm going to give you the lowdown on all the pros and cons. All right, let's take a close look at these frogs. Now, as I pointed out earlier, these are hollow body lures. Hollow body. And the purpose of the hollow body is so that the hook point can rest tight up against it, and then that way you don't get snagged on grass and seaweed as you're reeling it through the water. But if a fish comes along and they bite it, it's easy to compress, and it exposes that hook point, and you get a really nice hook set. And these, all three of these, pretty much work the same way. But of all the ones I've used over the years, this is my favorite. This is called the Scum Frog Bigfoot. It gets its name from these oversized paddle-shaped feet. And when you're reeling it through the water, they're slapping around. They're moving a lot of water around. They're making a lot of noise, just making a big commotion. And that's what attracts the fish, especially the big ones. Now, it doesn't matter how you retrieve it. You can reel it in fast. We call that ripping. So you can rip it through the water. You can reel it slow. You can twitch it. You can pop it. You can even let it sit still. All of these hollow body frogs float. So you can just let it sit there and catch a fish. You don't even have to know how to fish. You're going to catch monsters on that lure. They sell for about $7. You can find them pretty much in any tackle shop. I have a Dick's Sporting Goods near me, so that's where I go for a lot of my stuff, and they carry them. They come in 9 different colors, and they run about $7. So if you're a young angler, you're just getting started, or maybe you're an adult, haven't done much fishing, and you're just really starting to get into it, I would recommend going with that frog right there. You can't go wrong. All right, let's look at the next lure in the lineup. Now let's talk about whopper ploppers. Whopper ploppers come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. Way more than what I have here, but I wanted to pick these 3 to get started with. Now, the whopper plopper is a type of a buzzbait, but it doesn't operate the way a typical buzzbait works. When you say buzzbait, most people picture some sort of a blade in the front spinning around. These don't have that. Their buzz comes from this back tail. What happens is, as you're reeling this through the water, that tail is spinning around and it's slapping the water. And as it slaps that water, it makes sort of a popping sound. And then there's a gurgle. When you figure out what speed to retrieve the particular lure at, you get a gurgle with the pop. And I call that a popping gurgle. And you want to fine tune that sound. Now, I can't explain that here, but as you get using these lures, you'll hear it. And then you're always trying to achieve that same popping, gurgling sound, no matter which one of these you're using. Now, what determines which one you're using is the conditions of the water. And what I mean by that is if it's really smooth, say, then you could start off with this smaller one and get a nice popping, gurgling sound. But if the water gets a little bit rough, like it's windy and it's starting to create some chop, you're going to want to bump up a size or two. And it depends on how big the chop is and how hard the wind is as to which one of the bigger ones you're going to go to. They all work, but you're trying to get them to work at their best. So you're trying to achieve that popping, gurgling sound. And when you do, the fish will just inhale these things. They'll come out of nowhere and attack it really ferociously, like they're mad at it or something. Just look at the scars that we've got on this one here. This is all bite marks from the fish hitting it that hard. So the Whopper Plopper is a great buzz bait to use in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall. Not so much in the winter because it's more of a topwater bait. And I'm not saying you can't catch them, but you're not going to catch as many as if you went subsurface or deeper lures. So that's my take on the Whopper Plopper. I would definitely recommend putting a couple of these in a tackle box. Now let's look at the next one. GoPro stop. Now let's talk about buzz baits. There are literally hundreds of buzz baits on the market to choose from, and the selection can be overwhelming. So I just picked these three out of my tackle box to discuss. Now these are considered true buzz baits, meaning that they have a propeller on the front that spins in the water as you're retrieving the lure. And that propeller, as it's spinning, we can't hear it, but it's making a squeaking sound. And each company's got their own way of creating that squeak. So this particular one I'm looking at here has a little washer that's riding over a rougher sleeve here, and it makes this squeak as it's going through the water. And it just drives the fish crazy. This one over here, they're using a little ball that this propeller bounces back and forth on, so you get a squeaking and a clicking. But of these three, my favorite one is the one in the middle. This is called a buzz plug, and it's made by a company called Arbogast. You can find these in Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods, and even on Amazon. And they're not very expensive. They run between $5 and $10, depending on who you buy it from. This one, they get their squeak off this aluminum blade spinning around a steel wire. It's built like a frog. It's got the colors of a frog. I have caught a ton of bass on this particular lure. I really like it a lot. It's a great lure to use in the spring and the summer, even in the fall. But not so much in the winter, because in the wintertime, the top water bait is pretty much off. Now, I'm not saying you can't catch a fish. Of course you can, but you're going to catch more fish if you go under the water in the wintertime. So anyway, that's my take on the buzz plug. Again, when I'm picking buzz baits, this is my first choice. Now let's look at the next lure. The Hula Popper. Now this particular one is brand new, but they've been around since 1940 something. That's over 80 years ago. And the reason they've been around that long time is because they flat out work. They catch big fish. Now, sometimes they don't have that back hook. They might have a set of silicone strands similar to this, but longer. Or they might have a pair of silicone strands off to each side. Or they might have a little blade on the back similar to this. This one we call a Colorado blade. And when they're long and skinny, they're called willow leaf blades, and they're for flash. So depending on which one you are using, you're going to fish it a little bit differently. But all of them pretty much are easy to fish. What you do, you don't want to go into the lily pads with these things, because those treble hooks are going to get caught every single time. So this is a topwater bait that you fish outside the lily pads. Stay away from laydowns, things like that. So you need clear water. Now, there's a number of ways that you could retrieve this. After you cast it, you let it set for a second. Typically, you let all the rings, the ripples, disappear. When the ripples have disappeared, you're going to give it a little pop, which creates another set of ripples. When they disappear, you're going to reel it a little bit and then pop it. And you can mix it up. You can reel and pop, or you can pop, pop, pop. Any number of ways. You can't go wrong. The fish love these things. They'll watch them for a minute and then they'll attack it. So you want to have a couple of these in different colors. I would stick with that size. Tails, that's your personal preference. I like this one. I've caught a lot of fish, not on this one because it's brand new, but on ones like it. The hula popper is just a great lure to have in your arsenal. So they run anywhere from $5 to $10. You can get them in Walmart. You can get them at Dick's Sporting Goods. You can find them on Amazon. Go out and get you a couple of good hula poppers. You'll be glad you did. Now let's look at the next group. Snakehead lures. Now these three lures are made by the same company, an outfit called Snakehead Outlaws. And they're a local company. They're not a big company. I think they're out of Lower Delaware. They're up and coming, but you're not going to find these lures in Walmart, Dick's, Bass Pro Shops. I don't even think they have them on Amazon. They might, so you might want to check. But they're great lures. Each one of these has a blade in the back. Not all snakehead lures do, but these three do. So this has double Colorados. This has the single. This has the single as well. Let's start with this little guy over here. So this little lure would best be used when the fish are finicky. And by finicky, I mean they don't want to eat. And that happens a lot when the temperatures in the water start to cool down. So in our area, that's around October, November, early December, depending on how quickly the winter comes in. So this would be a good small lure to use, and you're going to fish this like you would most frogs. You're going to throw it out in the lily pads, or what's left of them that time of the year, and you're just going to pop it through there. So you twitch it, you pop it, you let it set, you reel it real quick, you let it stop. And, you know, there's a number of different techniques you could use, and you'll figure out your own rhythm after a while. But again, this would be used when the fish are not seeming to bite. These other two are good-sized lures, so those conditions wouldn't apply to those. This one's got a set of the silicone tails that sort of resemble frog legs. That's what this is supposed to be, even though this doesn't look anything like a frog. Sometimes you're better off to use some odd-looking lure that the fish haven't seen before, because fish can get what's called fished out. They just get used to seeing the same old lures all the time, and after a while they recognize them as fake. So every once in a while, you got to throw them a curveball. This would be a good one. This one here is my favorite in the group. I've got them in several different colors. The sizes, you pretty much stuck with that size. But I've got a pinkish white one that I have caught more fish on as far as snakehead lures than any other lure in my collection. I like these double paddle tails in the back. They create a lot of flash and a lot of splash. And that's a great combination for attracting fish. Really hard to get hung up because of that hollow body design. The hooks set really tight against the back. But again, as you know, as the fish bite, they compress, they expose that hook. I took this up to a tournament in Susquehanna. I wasn't expecting to catch anything, and I caught a ton of smallmouth bass during a tournament up there. And I caught a rockfish in another tournament, and I wasn't expecting that. So this is a great lure. This is a great lure. This is a great lure. The one in the middle is my favorite. If I were you guys, I would run out to that store as soon as I got a chance and pick up several of these. Experiment with color, sizes, and styles, but you can't go wrong. All right, let's move on to the last one in the group. The hollow-bodied white rat, or mouse, depending on how you look at it, I guess. I really like this lure. I've had a number of them over the years, but I like this one the best. This is my favorite one so far. And the reason I like it so much is that profile. And by profile, I mean the way that it looks sideways. You can see that curvature. It's got like a lifted head look to it. And what that does for you is it glides through the water better when there's debris in the water. Like if you're dragging it through lily pads, or if you're bringing it over a log. I've gotten a lot of hits as soon as it comes over the log and back down into the water. And the reason is the fish think that the mouse was running down the log and fell in. It's a very realistic thing for them to see, and they just leap on it. So this is a great lure for top water. I also like these red eyes. That seems to draw the fish as well. I think that the points are in the perfect place in the back of this lure. They rest just on top and behind the beginning of the rear legs of this mouse. But it doesn't take much compression, and as you can see, you get full exposure of the hook point, which makes for a strong hook set. I like the tail in the back. I think that also adds to the attraction to the fish. Now, when I first bought this, a tail was probably about that long, but I cut it down. And the reason that I do that is I found over the years, you'll get what they call short strikes. That's when a fish comes up and he actually bites a lure, but he comes short of the hook. So by trimming that tail, I've encouraged, almost forced the fish to come up much deeper. And when they compress, expose those hooks, you get a very strong hook set. I also like to do what's called a walk the dog technique with this. It works better than with frogs because you got that rounded belly on the bottom and that elongated look. So it pivots on that belly very easily. Just twitch here, twitch there, and you get this walk the dog rhythm, as they call it. Now that's sort of an advanced technique, but it's not going to take you guys long to master that. It's pretty easy, very effective, attracts a lot of big fish. Well, that's the last of the group, guys. And there you have it. That's my take on topwater baits. Now, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button down there. If you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button too. That way, you'll get a notification every time I put out a new video. If there's something you want to see in particular, leave your suggestion in the comment box and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time on another episode of the Scoochie Moffit Show.